One of the hallmarks of these Vedic people that come to really inhabit the whole area that's bright in this map here, so that Indus River Valley, but then extending all the way to the east, is that they bring really elaborate worship rituals with them. And that sets them apart from indigenous cultures, the people who live there already. They sing those hymns that I discussed. They sacrifice cattle. They sacrifice horses and sheep. They burn ghee, which is a type of clarified butter. And kind of unfortunately for us, they never built any type of temples, so we don't know how they saw their gods, how they envisioned them. They don't have a written language, and that's kind of a downside. So another hallmark of these folks is that they fuse with the people who had been left over from the Harappan civilization. They adopt their language, they figure out how to farm from them, they adopt agriculture, which means that they also settle down. And those things really change how they operate as a society. If you go from moving around hunter-gatherers conquering people to settling down, growing crops, and living in cities, you're going to have different values and different requirements. We see chieftainships develop, where there are a bunch of small kingdoms. Inhabitants are connected to each other through lines of descent from their common ancestors within the Vedic tribe. And kind of in terms of that descent, or in terms of the families that come to develop, there are two lineages that become important, and they're referred to as lunar and solar, kind of the moon side and the sun side. They each have their own creation myths, they each have their own ancestors, they each have their own versions of language, they each have their own rituals. But within those two lineages, there's also tons of other clans. And one of the things we see developing is kind of stagnation in social rank, where particular families become important and they continue to become important. What do you do with all the people that are around there already? Well, over time, if those indigenous people start adopting the religion and customs of the Vedic people, they get absorbed in, and they become part of that Vedic civilization as well. If they don't, they're kind of seen as outsiders, and they still live there, but they aren't entitled to a lot of the rights. And we'll see how this plays out as we go on a little bit. As this society expands, the Solar clan remains more or less put, and they stay in that Indus River Valley. The Lunar clan migrates to the east. They go into the Ganges River Valley, the Deccan Plain, which is one of those terms I had on the first slide. And although these two different lineages are separated by physical distance, they still maintain contact with each other, especially through marriage. What we see is urban societies and states arising in this area. And one of the results of this is that over time in big cities, lineage becomes less important, but it does kind of live on in a couple of different ways. One, in something called the Mahabharata, which discusses the history of the lunar lineage, and one called the Ramayana, which talks about really the hero of the solar lineage. And later folks who come to power really draw on these two different epics to legitimize their claims, explain why they're powerful and why they come from where they are.